You know, life in the cinematic landscape would be very different if Matrix didn't exist.
Most of the movies wouldn't exist.
Someone needs to make a movie out of that idea. Like, what would the movie landscape look like if Matrix didn't exist?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, we certainly know that the movie that we just watched wouldn't exist. At least not in the way it was done.
Probably.
What's up, guys? We're the Cinefanatics. My name is Chris Adams.
And I'm Robert Adams.
Yeah, that's right. So this movie that we just watched probably wouldn't exist as we saw it anyway, given that it's based off of source material.
Mm-hmm.
That movie is Alita Battle Angel, which the original source material being called Battle Angel Alita, so they swapped them for some reason.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, like, honestly, that was a high intense movie. Like, action, just so much to look at. I'm still trying to, like, process through stuff. That's why words aren't correct when mouth coming out of.
Well, it's also because we're the Cinefanatics channel.
And that's how we do it here.
I would like to point out at the top of this, though, that
it's also very late.
that neither one of us are manga comic readers. So, therefore, we're not familiar with the source material at all.
You can tell because he called it a manga comic.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, we don't read manga, so...
Yeah, we're not familiar with Alita. We're not familiar with the story at all going into this. So we are fresh pair of eyes, two pairs of eyes, four, eight. We got fresh eyes going into this, and we had no idea what any of it was about, aside from what they showed us in the trailer, 2 years ago when we first started seeing trailers for this movie.
And what little we may have read, wait, what's this movie about type of thing after seeing a trailer, but, that really didn't show too much.
Right, so the interesting thing about this is that this was actually supposed to come out last year.
Well, supposedly James Cameron, the producer, has been working on this for 20 years and then partnered up with Robert Rodriguez, and Rodriguez directed it through Troublemaker, which was shot here in Austin.
Which is probably part of the most surprising part, is that this is a Robert Rodriguez movie. This didn't actually feel like any of his other work.
No, it didn't.
I'm looking back on, the closest in thematic would be maybe Spy Kids, but I'm looking back at Sin City and all these others, and I'm like, none of this felt like his past work at all. And I think that's a large part is due to, just jumping in here, the visuals of the movie. This is a highly CGI movie. Again, is apart from most of Robert Rodriguez's earlier works. Just going in there this, I think the standout piece about this movie, the part that really gets you from the beginning, and I think had me from the beginning, had me invested in this entire thing, was Alita.
Yeah.
I think that is a big piece as to why this movie does actually work, is because, first of all, Rosa Salazar being a standout performance in that role really made Alita work, made her fantastical appearance actually believable. I know a lot of people thought going into this movie that those big eyes were going to be a huge turnoff, that's going to lose them. No, not at all. You don't even notice it. Well, 5 minutes into the movie, maybe. At
some point, I started thinking that she really was a person with just really big eyes. We see people with big nose, big mouths, big ears. That she was just a person with just really big eyes. And there were a couple of times in that I had to keep telling myself, no, she's CGI. Yeah. She's not really like that. So,
which that's a huge thing for CGI. If you have to remind yourself that you're looking at CGI, that's a win for CGI.
Yeah, and she definitely had a lot more human facial movements, characteristics from other than what you saw in the trailer. The trailer just shows a CGI girl just bouncing around, kicking and punching and stuff. This one actually showed the human behind that CGI, and you could see it. And it's probably one of the better done CGI human forms that I've seen in a movie.
Motion capture, yeah. So as far as that goes, this is one of the better motion captures where you're really capturing that performance that, in this case, Rosa Salazar was actually giving off. You saw the emotion in her face. They did a lot of those really close up, shots of her where you could see just how she was feeling in that moment coming through. And I think that just the level of work that went into that, that's a new route for CGI that I haven't seen yet. So that's the visuals of this movie are impressive. And beyond that, you have like the landscapes, the cities,
which is decent.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, there were times when I'm like, okay, I'm obviously looking at a CGI landscape, and so you have this world being built here essentially through the storytelling, through the CGI here, and that I think that's a big piece I want to jump into here is just the world building. I would equate this almost to like a Star Wars level of world building, whereas Star Wars you have multiple galaxies, planets, whatever. This all takes place in one kind of basic central location. But just the amount of depth that's in that location.
There's definitely some space to expand, which there's probably a good chance that they will expand on this with sequels, future movies. So that might be pretty good. Some of the thing that, like, I know that both of us were kind of iffy about was the lack of exposition. I mean, again, we're not familiar with the source material, so it was kind of hard for us to grasp on some of the concepts that they were introducing to you. They throw some things at you at the very beginning, and then you're off.
Yeah.
And then you don't get like any more real story until they start like teaching Alita and training her as to how to exist in this world. And then you get some through basically her big eyes, but that's about it. I mean, there's not too much. One of my issues with it were the names.
Yeah.
A lot of the names are very, like, abstract. They're very, I don't know. They're not normal names that you hear.
I mean, this takes place several centuries ahead in time, so you're expecting names to change at this point.
So that made it kind of hard to kind of follow some of these characters. Yeah. You're like, wait, what was his name? Who are we talking about here? And like some of that I would say is the movie. The movie just didn't do a good enough job of explaining who this person is, why they're important, and most importantly, what exactly is their name, because a lot of them are just said real quick in passing. Some of it is also I would say my issue as a moviegoer going and watching this and hearing a name with the assumption that most of your moviegoers are probably going to remember just that name, while some people may need a little bit more, hey, remind me of who that person is again.
Yeah, I mean, that for the names thing, that's kind of my problem with it. I think there's a couple characters where they could have just had, just right there front and center on the screen, someone could have said their name, and maybe they did and they just did it quickly, but just give me a moment where it's kind of just like drilled into me, essentially. Because that's the thing with these movies, is you have your fan base who knows the names, they know the stories, they know how this works, but then to be successful as you want it to be, for this franchise to actually blossom, you have to pander a little bit to us general audience members who aren't familiar with the original source material and don't really have enough time to actually get familiar before we go see a movie. So you have to kind of hold our hand just a little bit, just with some of these names and some of the themes and ideas. For the most part, though, I was able to follow along. I was able to stick with it, and I do think it worked. The biggest thing I have, though, is that there was just so much packed into this movie that they could have actually just split it up into 2 movies, and it probably would have helped streamline a lot of it a little bit more. Including maybe some of the dialogue and stuff too. Some of the script was a little off to me. Some of the lines just felt a little, okay, it's just a little clunky in places.
I mean, there's a lot of like your very stereotypical cliched good person versus bad person, which it comes in with good person versus bad person dialogue. One scene, we're in a bar full of a bunch of tough people, and they're all saying tough people stuff. Like, okay, we get it. You're a tough, awesome, whatever person. Like, okay, but you really need to say the most cliched line possible? I mean, just stuff like that could be tweaked and fine-tuned, I think. But, I mean,
there's a few places it could have been fine-tuned a little bit. Outside of that, though, I mean, you still have, like, the other performers in the movie, too. So the other 2 big ones would be, like, Christoph Waltz,
who did fantastic in this movie. And he almost does, like, fantastic in every single thing I see him in.
I just expect greatness out of him at this point.
Yeah, he came running on the scene with Hans Landa, and it's just, I love Hans Landa, I love Christoph Waltz. Just, he can't do anything wrong.
The other big one for me was Mahershala Ali. Now, the thing is, I love Mahershala Ali. I've loved him in every single thing I've seen him in. I think he's probably one of the best just modern, current working actors out there.
Yeah.
I look forward to anything that any project his name is attached to at this point. He was severely underutilized in this movie, though. He wasn't given enough to do in this movie.
Which is funny because, and I've said this before, I think in our Green Book review, which he was fantastic in Green Book as well, but he had a very small, short role in Moonlight. Mm-hmm. And he won the Oscar for that. And it was also very much deserved, but they took a very small role of his, and he didn't feel underutilized in that.
He's no stranger to making greatness out of small bit parts.
And I think they could have given him a little bit, I guess, wider of an angle to play in this.
Maybe a little bit more weight to his character.
Yeah. And I think when we talked about this movie before, like on previous videos or something, they're like, yeah, this movie's just completely sold based off of Mahershala Ali and Christoph Waltz being in it. Mm-hmm. And then we go to watch this movie, and I would have now said that this movie would be sold just on Rosa Salazar's performance and CGI and everything.
I think that's the big thing to take away from this, is that this movie works, and the reason it works is completely based on Alita herself, mm-hmm. which is actually what you really want for this movie.
So, as far as like ranking this movie, I'm trying to think what I would potentially view it as. Let's say out of 5. Here's the thing: I'm gonna definitely need to watch this movie again. Eyes. Yeah, out of 5 eyes, I would rank this, as of right now, I'm probably going to give this 3.5 eyeballs. That opinion will probably change once I get to watch this movie again. Now that I've gotten through the movie, I'm familiar with the world that it was creating.
Yeah.
Now I want to go back knowing who's who, what characters they're talking about because of the names and stuff. Mm-hmm. Now being able to follow along, knowing these people, these characters. So that will probably go up higher. But yeah, 3.5 I would say right now.
You know what? As much as I would love to come up with a different score than you, I would have to say it's a 3.5 also, just because I had so much fun with this movie. I thought it was a ton of fun. It did have my attention. I was invested in Alita's character all the way through. I just think there was some minor issues that kept it from being higher in the score. But yeah, I mean, 3 out of 5. For all intents and purposes, absolutely worth going to see in the theater on a big, big screen.
Mm-hmm. We didn't get to check it out in 3D, but we've been told to watch this in 3D.
Yeah.
So
I would almost be willing to go back and watch it again in 3D if my pocketbook would allow that right now.
You have a pocketbook?
I meant wallet.
Oh, okay.
I don't live in the 1900s.
Yeah, we're in Austin, Texas, so we don't have pocketbooks.
So we want to thank you guys for checking out this review. Let us know down below, have you seen Alita? What did you think of it? We would love to have a conversation with you about that movie. If you like this video, though, drop us a like, comment down below what you thought of this video.
Anyway, so yeah, hang out with us, stay tuned, make sure you subscribe up here, watch a bunch of other videos over here.
Over there.
Yeah, and of course, as always...
Why are their eyes so big? Well, eyes are a window to the soul.
Later.
See ya. So that quote was from Big Eyes, another Big Eye movie starring Christoph Waltz. What's with him and Big Eyes?